Welcome to PJNET Live as we, that is us, parents, not bots, but concerned parents, express our outrage over the disaster called Common Core, focusing tonight specifically on the state of Alabama. Now, folks, before we introduce our special guest, I can tell you from personal experience and testimony that I have traveled throughout that great state. I have done business in that great state. I have many friends and associates in that great state. So let me tell you a little bit of what I know about Alabama. And let's start in Huntsville. Now, folks, if NASA is going to take us to the moon, we're going to need Huntsville's involvement because NASA has developed one of the finest complexes up there for research and for engineering and the like. In fact, and around that, of course, has sprung up an entire techno-industrial complex, including a great company I do a lot of business with called Adtran. And if you're in the networking business, you probably know about Cisco, but Adtran makes the same thing, well, for about half the price. Folks, there's a beautiful place in Alabama called Lake Eufaula, and the city of Eufaula is right there. And if you go there, you will find license tags from around the country where people for tourism and recreation, but even professionals, seek out Lake Eufaula for the fine bass fishing that is found there. But just a little bit just down the road, you'll find Daleville, Alabama. If you drive by and get near Daleville and look up in the sky, you're going to see some helicopters sooner or later. Because you see, Daleville is home, near Daleville is Fort Rucker. Now, Fort Rucker is named after the great General Edmund Rucker, a general in the Confederate Army. Let's keep it that way. Home of the Apache helicopter, one of the most lethal and feared weapons in the United States military arsenal. And hey, while you're there, you ought to stop by Enterprise, because at Enterprise you'll find the eighth wonder of the world. Yes, a monument to the boll weevil. Where else but Alabama? And if you go farther south, the great city of Mobile, I've spent quite a bit of time in Mobile during my tenure as the disaster relief director with the Florida Baptist Association. Because when storms come, Mobile is often a target. And I have been to Mobile and inland areas and discovered people that had lost everything. But they didn't lose everything, folks, because the one thing you can't take away from the people of Alabama is their pride and their determination and their goodwill. And I was honored to serve alongside as we brick by brick, nail by nail, shingle by shingle, not only rebuilt it, but built it back better than it was before. Folks, there's a lot to be proud of if you're from Alabama. This Floridian is proud just to share the border with that great state. And we have a very special guest, a champion of the state of Alabama, but more importantly, a champion of the people of Alabama. Many of you, if you don't recognize his name, you will recognize the judge that stood firm and had a monument of the Ten Commandments in his courtroom and stood up to every power that there was. Judge Roy Moore is with us, and I'd like to bring him on our set right now. Judge Moore, Alabama, you must be proud to be from that great state. But with all that's going on, there are problems and there are challenges. And some bean counter with a propeller on his beanie cap says that Alabama school systems are number 50 among the 50 states. So y'all must be pretty stupid there, according to them. Is that the case?
Well, I don't think so. I think Alabama has every right to run its own education system, not the federal government.
Well, it seems like with all that I just said, looks like you're doing pretty well before the federal government got involved. You have gotten so convinced in your pursuit in serving the people of Alabama that you are now running for the vacated seat in the U.S. Senate. What do you hope to bring to the United States Senate if you are given the honor of serving in that capacity.
Well, thank you, Mark, and I am proud of Alabama. I've been here all my life. The only time I was away was in the military when I was in Vietnam, and when I graduated from the United States Military Academy after 4 years there. I'm proud of Alabama. I'm proud of its people. We have a great place, and if I go to the Senate, I'll represent the values and standards that they have, which I think are basic core values for our country. I will also take knowledge of the United States Constitution, which I swore to uphold as long ago as 1965 on the banks of the Hudson River at the United States Military Academy. I did that in Vietnam. I did that in Europe when I was in service there. And I did it as a judge and as deputy district attorney, as a chief justice, and I'll do it as a senator. I think we need to go back to the Constitution for our happiness and our well-being. If we do not, our country will fall.
Judge, oh, by the way, folks, if you are not able to remember all of the credentials that he just mentioned, and he did not mention all of them, if you will go to JudgeRoyMooreForSenate.com, and that "for" is spelled F-O-R, just JudgeRoyMoore.com. His resume, well, we don't have time to go into all of the items on his resume. What made you do this, Judge Moore? You've been in public service all your life, but what made you look at the Senate at this time?
Well, at one time, states' legislatures chose a senator for the state. That was before the people began to vote on senators under the 17th Amendment in 1913. But senators were supposed to protect the state as well as the people of their state from deprivation of their rights and liberties. And I think that somehow we think that when they go to federal government, we become part of the federal government. Well, we are part in the sense that we serve as the United States Senate or Congress, but we still are Alabamians, and we still need the values and principles from which our Constitution and of our state and that of the United States is found. And that's basically in God and the Constitution. If we forget those values, then, we shouldn't be there.
Well, Judge Moore, what strikes me about the Senate is the Senate, unlike the House, the Senate is a deliberative body. This is the centerpiece of a republic versus a democracy. In the House, people just vote the way their constituents or they perceive they would feel. But the Senate is a deliberative body. And how does your experience that you've had uniquely qualify you?
Well, of course, it's a deliberative body on issues that come before them, and we deliberate, if you will, on cases under the law. You see, judges are sworn to the law just like senators, just like the president. We're sworn to the same law. The United States Constitution in Article 6 says the representatives and senators before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers of both the United States and of the several states shall be sworn to uphold the United States Constitution. And so, when we deliberate on law or deliberate on the laws of our state, we're doing the same thing that we did as a judge. It's just different issues.
Let's take an example. Last year, the Senate took up a bill and decided to make Common Core part of the Department of Education's agenda. As senator, would you vote in favor of that if it were compromised down enough and made palatable? What is the role of the Federal Department of Education as far as you're concerned?
If it were made palatable and reduced down enough, I would still vote against it. Because you see, education is not within the confines of the federal government. Never has been, never will be. Used to be the Republican Party recognized that. And today we go along with anything they do with education. Education should, if it belongs to the state and to the parents. Actually, the education of children is first with the parents. Now, states have some rules and regulations, but certainly not the federal government has anything to do with education. Whether it's Common Core or Race to the Top, I've seen these names change just with
it's alphabet soup, yeah.
They both seem to recognize that the federal government has something to do with education. What I feel about this, Mark, is that they must think we're pretty dumb when it takes people in Washington, which are generally liberal, to tell us how to educate our children. Not only tell us how to educate our children, but what we must teach them. And that's what Common Core is. It's certainly an indoctrination tool. I'll always vote against education from the federal government because the federal government has no dealings or no business dealing with education of children.
I've read the 10th Amendment, and I can't find any mention of education in there. And I don't think you'll find that word in the entire text of the United States Constitution and its amendments and so forth. Congressman Thomas Massey in the House has introduced a bill to actually eliminate the Department of Education. Were he to be successful and go to the Senate, how would you be willing to close the Department of Education given the opportunity?
Oh, very much so, yes.
we like.
I mean, that's an easy question for me because we've got to go by the Constitution. We're sworn to the Constitution. Washington said it somewhat in his farewell address. He said, "Toward the preservation of your government and the permanency of your present happy state, it is requisite not only that you steadily discountenance irregular oppositions to its acknowledged authority, but also that you resist with care the spirit of innovation upon its principles, however spacious the pretext." What he was saying, basically, if you're going to remain happy and have a good government, you got to go back to the principles and you got to take an oath to the Constitution. That Constitution says very clearly in Amendment 10 that the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, or reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. That means that the federal government has nothing to do with education because education is not in the Constitution.
There are 18 enumerated powers, and education ain't one of them.
It's not given to the federal government. They don't have any business dealing with it. And I just don't understand why people who are sworn to the Constitution turn their backs on that document and vote for such things as federal education.
Yeah.
And then you have a liberal president comes in, he wants to teach bathroom for transgenders. I mean, in our schools. I mean, these things are crazy. Teach children that they have to take lessons teaching that they can be a different sex or different gender. This is absolutely indoctrination, and it's what was done in Germany and other parts of the world to our detriment.
Other issues that if you were in the Senate, how would you be voting? I'll let you call the shot. Name some issues and how you would vote.
Well, I don't think there's anything in health care in the federal government. The General Welfare Clause does not mean you can dictate the health care system. And, we've got to address these issues. We need to repeal Obamacare. We don't need to replace it. We need to repeal it. And then we need to open up the states under the Interstate Commerce Clause to free, no regulation between the states on these insurance companies. Let insurance competition, the free enterprise system, will make our healthcare system better. We've always had the greatest in the world because we've had such a system. But now we're following London or England and other countries who have had socialized medicine. Didn't work there, and it won't work here. It just takes time to realize that.
Well, and truth told, if the people of the great state of or Commonwealth of, and then fill in the blank, if their citizens want to get together and make an arrangement whereby everybody has some form of insurance coverage, that they could do that in that state, couldn't they? And then they'd have all these people attracted to their state.
Sure.
So I don't understand. I'm like you. What does the federal government? It's to me, it's just not constitutionally empowered to. We can, let's put it this way: pass an amendment to the Constitution, and we can have the debate. But until then, there's nothing to debate. And
what we find in government today, Mark, is that they're not going by the Constitution. Neither branch is going by it. The legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We find courts making up things in the Constitution that don't exist there. They're actually amending the Constitution in violation of Article 5, which is the only proper way to amend the Constitution. They just want to create a new right. They create a new right, and every time they do, they take away one that God gave you. When they created a right to privacy, they took away the life of the child in the womb. They made abortion legal. The institutions of our society are being destroyed by an overwhelming federal government that just assumes all power.
Judge Moore, let me ask you personally a question that I, time to time, when I get to speak with candidates, ask, and it really tells a lot. I think that there are many people, candidates that sought office and got on the campaign trail with a sincere, heartfelt desire to go to Washington to change things. But all too often, when they get to Washington, Washington begins to change them. And then they come back to their particular constituents and have town halls and begin lecturing the people there on how things are in Washington. How are you going to avoid that from happening to Senator Judge Moore?
Well, Mark, I'm old enough now that it's very hard to change me. Other things have had to tried to change me, and I haven't changed. That's part of the reason I have trouble with the courts, because they seem to take too much power, and I resist such a thing. I'm just not a follower. I do what I believe, and I think I'll do the same thing in Washington as I did in the state. I'll stand up for the rights and liberties of the people. When we start making these rights and liberties up, then we're really taking them away from people. So I'm not going to change. At least that's what my wife says.
Well, and we've seen you stand firm when if there was any notion in your conscience to capitulate, compromise, surrender, or anything else, you were given every opportunity, but you stood firm. Judge Moore, you are a champion, and we believe you, and we hope that you can have the opportunity to serve the great people of the great state of Alabama as their United States Senator, and we wish you well. And any closing remarks, and if anybody wants more information, please visit Judge Roy Moore for Senate.com, but give you the closing remarks, Judge Moore. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Well, Mark, I appreciate what you do and your leadership in this important area, but realize that we're in a battle here. And just recently, the Senate Republican Senate Committee decided that they would protect the incumbency of the recently appointed senator upon the vacation of Jeff Sessions. And they cut off all fundraising mechanisms for consultants in the federal system up there that they were funding, and said that if they did fund anyone against this senator that's running for office, which I'm running against, that they would cut off their money completely. This kind of business at the very highest echelons of government should be stopped. This is a free enterprise system. It's where we have elections that people are free to elect who they want, and but basically what we're finding is that's trying to be tampered with. We need to look at that. We're in a battle here in Alabama, and I guess it's the establishment doesn't want someone like myself who go up there and do what's right under the Constitution. They won't tell the people of Alabama how to act and how to vote, basically. And I think that's wrong. So we'll keep fighting and we'll keep standing for what's right under the Constitution of the United States. And to make it a better place, you know, President Trump said he wanted to make America great again. And I do too. I want to make America great again. But first, we have to make America good again. And we can make America good again by returning to virtue and morality and recognizing the source of that virtue and morality, which is Almighty God. We shouldn't be ashamed. We shouldn't be embarrassed. Our forefathers would cry out from their grave if we deny that God on whom this nation and our principles are founded. So we've just got to be plain spoken and stand for the truth, and we will prevail. Thank you.
Okay. Well, folks, you heard it from Judge Roy Moore. You need to Google that name. You need to find out more about Judge Roy Moore. He is steadfast. He is an iron peg driven into the frozen tundra. He's a man of principle. He's a man you can count on. He's one of those men who says what he means, and he means what he says, and he won't cut and run on you. Okay, you can count on him. It's been our pleasure to have him join us here tonight at PJNET as we continue our Stop Common Core hashtag rally here at PJNET.